about you. Predictable. And that's why we're gonna win. We know your move before you do. We know how you think!
If the Arkham Knight knew Batman as well as he claimed he did, or even Scarecrow for that matter, why didn't either one of them trick Batman into breaking his one rule? His rule of no killing. Wouldn't that be the cheapest and easiest way to break the Dark Knight down? To have him finally cross that threshold, ripping wide open the thin veil that separated him from the criminals that ran the streets? This is a flaw within the Arkham Knight's character and the story of the game's writing that's almost always brought up, especially when you talk of the Arkham Knight specifically. Never mind the Arkham Knight's actual identity. The entire beginning of the game, he claims he knows how Batman thinks, his moves, what he cherishes, and clearly he knows a lot of Batman's hideouts. The clock tower specifically is one big important one, as he knew how to get to Barbara. So minus his identity, clearly he has deep, intimate knowledge when it comes to Batman. Not only that, I think Batman's rule of not killing is kind of universally known. Scarecrow makes comments towards Batman's ferocity as the game progresses, and he starts getting doses of these fear toxins where he's starting to lose control, and Scarecrow begins to make comments on this. He says so during a cutscene on Stag's airship.
Something's changed. You're different. You almost killed these men. You were ready to abandon your beliefs, everything you stand for.
And then immediately after, he makes a PSA announcement over the city's intercom system, commenting on the same level of brutality.
The violence on Stag's airship was not your usual cold brutality. It was sadism. Your true instincts emerged, Batman. Thorned weeds creeping through cracked granite.
But going back to the Arkham Knight for a second, due to the intimate knowledge that he has on Batman, and the fact that he's basically the one in charge of the entire militia, overseeing the deployment of hundreds of armed troops and countless of unarmed drones, why not just place men within these unarmed drones and place Batman within a much tougher position? To have these men driving these vehicles would severely hamper the otherwise full reign of the Batmobile's deadly ordnance, giving the Arkham Knight, the militia, and Scarecrow yet another advantage. This is a handicap for Batman. He's got to find another way to be able to incapacitate all these tanks, because the Batmobile is armed with a cannon that's so powerful it will rip through the armor of these drones and kill anybody inside. Gameplay wise, I think it would have presented a very interesting dynamic, as you couldn't face any of the drones head on. The Batmobile might be able to give Batman a viable escape in tense situations, but you can't actually engage in direct combat, because then Batman would actually kill. On the surface, I think something like this was very easy to write off, as it sounds like the Arkham Knight, especially the Batmobile, was something that Rocksteady really wanted everyone to be able to properly enjoy and feel like they earned that power fantasy through way of the Batmobile. Anyways, today I wanted to dissect this idea of why Scarecrow and the Arkham Knight just didn't decide to get Batman to kill someone, especially this way. And I think we can break this down in two ways. The first of which requires us to look at the origins and the purpose of the alliance between Scarecrow and the Arkham Knight. The events of the game's story ultimately is Scarecrow's master plan unfolding, his plan to break Batman down, stretch him so thin the Dark Knight could not hope but to feel overwhelmed. As he begins to lose control over his city and his closest associates start to become targets that are ripped out of places that were believed to be safe for them, Batman would begin to feel incapable of defending anyone. Keeping people safe is what he's supposed to do, and now the city and his family is falling apart. Add in some microdoses of fear toxin, and he would slowly be broken down just as Scarecrow intended. A man ripped away from his mask. Defenseless, a failure, afraid. If we look at this from Scarecrow's plan, Batman being perceived as a failure wouldn't exactly coincide with making him appear to be a killer to the world. Scarecrow aims to break Batman down as an actual person first, to force him to suffer the pain and humiliation he felt when Killer Croc mauled him so long ago in Arkham Asylum. Scarecrow's primary focus is to mentally erode away Batman, the person behind the mask, and then go on to rip any hope anybody would have in the myth of Batman, to strike fear in his believers by completely annihilating any hope they may have in the myth and legend that may still survive. He aims to show that these people are mistaken. This is a man just as they are. A man who failed on such a large scale, an entire city paid the ultimate price for it. Batman's fall at its heart was a personal matter though. It's not exactly the same as just aiming at the symbol and what he represents. Scarecrow had a plan in mind, and his goal was to reduce this symbol to the man behind that mask. And he wanted to do it in a realm he was the dominant force in: fear. Having Batman take another person's life wouldn't give Scarecrow the same satisfaction in his revenge. It not only feeds into the idea of it being a cheap victory, but going about it the way that they end up doing would be effective in showing Batman that he cannot save anyone or everyone. It's an attack on the savior complex the villains he's facing must believe he has. It's a different angle to the age-old argument that he's no different than we are. So killing people wouldn't really fit within the plan Scarecrow had or the way he wanted to bring Batman down. The Arkham Knight, on the other hand, simply wanted Batman dead. He never appeared to care for anything beyond just watching the Dark Knight take his last breath. The Arkham Knight and Scarecrow were at odds with what they wanted their overall objective to be, with Scarecrow wanting to see Batman suffer. Arkham Knight simply wanted him dead. A goal he was extremely passionate about, which eventually led to the Arkham Knight outright disobeying Scarecrow by trying to kill Batman prematurely when he was commandeering the cloudburst around Gotham City. He became so fixated on watching his former mentor die, he ended up costing the cloudburst, driving a deeper wedge in between the alliance these two villains had. So, putting a person within these drones won't make sense within the Arkham Knight's plan, and we can chalk up the lack of Scarecrow wanting to do this as arrogance. A need to prove Batman is just a person who will experience the same shame and failure as he did. Emotions can be quite blinding, and I think it's fair to say emotions cloud the judgment of both the Arkham Knight and Scarecrow. But what about the other part of the video? A part that would destroy the entire game's writing if they had put people inside of these drones. If Batman had killed intentionally, or let's say he took a drone out only to realize he had actually killed someone sometime later, well, that would create a problem for the devil on Batman's shoulders, or shall I say inside of his own head. For the entire game, Joker's infected blood is still inside of Batman. After the initial dose of fear toxin, Joker's blood was augmented by the effects of said toxin. Every time he got hit with a new dose, Batman wasn't seeing the city burning or his loved ones screaming in fear and terror as Scarecrow had hoped. Instead, he was feeding another fear. The fear that he wouldn't be able to find a cure for the disease that's slowly turning him into the Joker. If he can't find a cure in time, then the sickness will take over, putting the sick mind of the Joker inside the body of Batman, thus creating an unstoppable force hell-bent on unleashing as much death and chaos as humanly possible. The point of the Joker in the entire game, besides providing some comical relief here and there, is to present the threat of Batman's health slowly breaking down. As he becomes exposed to more and more fear toxin, Joker becomes more and more powerful, each time tempting the Dark Knight to give in and lose his will. There's small glimpses here and there where he unleashes full brutality. He's much more ruthless and brutal compared to how he normally is, and villains make notes of this, but there's small slip-ups. After a while, he takes control again, pushing the Joker off to the side once more. So Joker's main point is to try to get Batman to kill. Once he crosses that threshold, he'll be handing complete control over to Joker. So placing people inside the unarmed drones or tricking Batman into taking a life would immediately mean the Joker wins. At the very end of the game, when Batman surrenders and he has one final hallucination, he finally caves and snaps the Joker's neck.
Go on, Bats. You know you want to. So you finally lost it, eh? Finally snapped my neck. No denying it this time. You've got the mind of a killer, and that mind is mine. It's over, Bruce. You crossed the blood-red line, and now Scarecrow's going to set me free.
That was the entire point. Now, there's no real casualties here. At the end of the day, he just killed the Joker, which is not only the worst of the worst, but it's a figment of his imagination. He didn't actually go through with it, but it does mentally prime him to do it. The rest of the game's finale is all about just how ineffective Scarecrow's fear toxin is to Batman in terms of watching Gotham burn and the suffering of his loved ones because he's too busy focused on trying to fight the bigger threat. Now, if we go back to the story, and Batman is still infected with Joker's blood, if at any point he ends up taking the life of someone else, intentionally or otherwise, it would just either defeat the entire purpose of the Joker, or it would make the story become a lot more convoluted and complex than it kind of already is. poor writing and oversight, if you just want to say it's an emotional, arrogant move on Scarecrow and the Arkham Knight, or just the need to have the Joker in yet another Arkham game. I guess there's a lot of different quote-unquote lazy ways to write it off to, but when it came to that topic, that was ultimately the way I thought of it. It can be broken down in one of two ways. Either we can humanize the villains and say, well, it's an emotional flaw within their plan, or it's just something that will defeat the purpose of the Joker as a whole if they manage to get Batman to kill. If they did do it, though, I think it would have translated into some interesting gameplay moments and probably would have hindered the Batmobile a lot more. So some people probably would have liked that. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below, and maybe consider subscribing, as I do have a massive Arkham Knight story analysis video that I'm currently working on, and that's basically what's inspired this video, because I started thinking about that.